One of the most recognizable superheroes in pop culture, the Flash is perhaps one of the fastest beings in DC Comics. While Barry Allen is the most well-known iteration of the character in the comics, there are many other versions, but Wally West is arguably faster than the former as the Scarlet Speeder. In 2009's The Flash, the Human Race comic series, West's version of the Flash reached something called trans-time velocity, which exceeded any speed theoretically possible in science. As a speedster, the Flash can easily travel well beyond the speed of light, which gives him the ability to time travel. This makes the character one of the most potent DC superheroes who can manipulate time to his advantage if need be. The ability to do this is indeed extremely powerful, but he isn't the hardest hitter nor the most durable. So while he is worth mentioning, he is not really powerful enough to make it any higher compared to others on this list. Number 9. Martian Manhunter. I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. Now, his probably most powerful form was when he became Furnace, completely negating his weakness for fire. But Furnace was a villain and therefore cannot be on this list. But in DC 1,000,000, we get a John Johns who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall in return gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius intelligence. We don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on the planet, you know? We can probably assume John keeps his other Martian abilities to a degree as well, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements. He can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree too, so there's that as well. Number 8. Power Girl. There have been many versions of Supergirl throughout the years. None were remembered as fondly as Kara Zor-El, the cousin of Superman. While Kal-El was rocketed to Earth as a child from a dying Krypton, Supergirl was sent out from Argo City as a teenager. She became trapped in suspended animation until she finally arrived on Earth, where she soaked up a ton of solar radiation. Now yes, Supergirl is powerful, but there is a more powerful alternate version of her in the form of Power Girl. Power Girl has all the powers and abilities of Kryptonian and is pretty much just like Supergirl, with a major difference being she is older than her counterpart, and therefore Karen Starr, Power Girl, is far more powerful. Over the years she has evolved again and again to fit the continuity, but she's still considered one of the strongest DC superheroes. Power Girl has been able to knock out Superman in just one punch when she was needed to. She can stand up to Supergirl and even Wonder Woman in the heat of combat, and she's even been able to beat up someone as powerful as Darkseid. Number 7. Shazam. Billy Batson is just a wee lad who, thanks to the wizard Shazam, could transform into a powerful magical hero named Captain Marvel, or if you prefer, just Shazam. By saying his magic word, he gained an array of attributes including the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. Shazam has proven himself to be nearly as strong as Superman, with the two having fought to a draw many times, with Shazam actually having an edge in the form of his magical abilities. Shazam defeated foes as powerful as Black Adam multiple times and went pound for pound, shot for shot with godlike people such as Hercules and the Spectre. And that's before we even get into Jokerized Shazam or even pre-Crisis Shazam, who had basically unlimited strength. Like so much so that he pulled the Earth back into spinning again. I don't know how it stopped spinning, it seems kind of like it would be impossible, but comic books, okay? He's been shown to be as strong enough to move planets and survive nearly the same amount of stuff as Superman, so I'm gonna place him here comfortably. Number 6. Wonder Woman. Gifted with the powers of the gods, Wonder Woman has many of the same abilities Superman possesses, including strength, speed, and durability. However, Wonder Woman's Amazonian training sets her a little apart as an amazing warrior. It's been debated for years whether Diana could beat Superman in a fight, and while she's shown to be capable of hurting him at the least, she doesn't have the same raw amount of power. Instead, Wonder Woman dominates her opponents through a combination of her special abilities, superior tactics, and special equipment given to her by the gods. But she has been elevated beyond this. When Diana was empowered with the World Forge and the anti-crisis energy at the end of Doom War / during Death Metal, she had enough power to shake stars and phase throughout time through sheer strength. She had displayed the ability to shrink an entire planet and was able to link everyone together and restored their memories as one history, as in all of DC's continuity. She has cosmic awareness, she's able to see multiple events during the war against the Batman who laughs at once, as well as precognition and retrocognition. She was crazy powerful for that time. Number 5. Superman Prime. The Kal-El, who lived to the 853rd century, survived as long as he did by literally becoming the living extension of the sun. He left the Earth somewhere in the late 21st century when everyone he cared about died, and traversed the entire DC multiverse going beyond time and space, and has been said to have reached as far as heaven and hell themselves. He was created by Grant Morrison and Val Semeiks and first appeared in DC 1,000,000 number 4 in 1998. Now, this version of Superman has pretty much all of the same general powers of his normal self, only Superman Prime remained in Earth's sun for 15,000 years, increasing his abilities to immeasurable levels. He is known to dwarf the might of even the massively powerful Kal Kent, who is himself more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star and is multiple times faster than the speed of light. But he is still kinda just Superman who can do a hell of a lot by just strengthening the heck out of it. Number 4. Elaine Belloq. Bet you weren't expecting to see this girl here. But Elaine Belloq is the successor to the throne of heaven, and that's quite something in my opinion. Elaine has got the powers of atomic manipulation, magic, immortality, omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. While you may not expect it, she is one of the strongest inhabitants of the DC universe. Compared to other characters on this list, Elaine is a newer addition to the DC canon as she first appeared in Lucifer number 4 in September of 2000. But despite that, she has quickly climbed the ranks of DC's most formidable characters, and that's before she gains even more power after Fenrir the Wolf de-lifes her father, effectively making her the ruler of heaven after the presence departs. Since she isn't really a hero and is more kind of just like both good and bad, she does align good more than not, and I found it kind of hard to find a proper place to put her on this list, so I'm gonna go with 4, and we'll suffer the consequences of my decision. Number 3. Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment sitting at ground zero of a nuclear explosion encased in an alien metal. The explosion didn't kill him though. What it did do was bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers and throwing him 20 so years forward into the present day. The alien metal gave him incredible abilities such as flight, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, time travel, magic, and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field. These powers have let him perform some insane feats, like creating a universe within the quantum field and later destroying that universe, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of Atom, before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. He is truly an insanely strong being, and I would be ashamed to not include him on this list. Number 2. The Spectre. One of the most powerful beings in the DC universe is the Spectre. He is the biblical god's spirit of vengeance. He blesses whoever his host is with nearly unlimited magical potential, flight, invisibility, and intangibility. The Spectre can inflict death with a glance, revive dead men, materialize in multiple locations simultaneously. He has molecular reconstruction. He can heal wounds with a touch and can teleport as well as alter his size, implying he has matter manipulation abilities. The power of the Spectre is so great it needs a human host to keep him in check, which doesn't really make sense. Jim Corrigan, Hal Jordan, and Crispus Allen have each taken control of the spirit of vengeance in order to enact their own versions of justice onto the world. One of the Spectre's most impressive physical feats is the fact he could engage the Anti-Monitor in hand-to-hand combat for control of all creation. It's hard to find heroes more powerful than the Spectre, but there is one. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. When I began to look up just what John Osterman, otherwise known as Dr. Manhattan's powers and feats were, well, the list could kind of take up nearly half the length of this video. So let's go through some of them, shall we? After he was destroyed and reconstituted from the atomic experiment gone wrong, John has no need for food, sleep, or oxygen, and no longer ages and can regenerate from any injury. He has nigh omniscience and possesses an understanding of the workings of the universe on a cosmic scale. He has reality warping and matter manipulation powers, allowing him to end literally everything, which he foresaw himself doing, so he obviously has precognition even as far as a millennium, and can even see alternate futures. He has causality and time manipulation, which allowed him to return the metaverse to how it was before his interference and remove 10 years from the universe's timeline, creating the New 52. He obviously has time travel, which he's used to travel back in time and save Jor-El right before Krypton's destruction. John experiences all the reboots in DC continuity, and yet he remains unaffected, and additionally, John exists in every timeline all at once, meaning that he has duplication and dimensional travel abilities as well. He possesses elemental manipulation, creating a ring of blue fire, producing an oxygen field, creating water, and producing electricity. Saying he has enhanced senses is kind of an understatement, as he can read atoms, sense tachyons, knew someone didn't have cancer with a glance, and heard a heartbeat from someone else's womb. He can phase through things, create human life, made plants grow, teleports an entire crowd of people away. He has instantly analyzed and learned magic after being attacked with it, and absorbed energy from a Green Lantern ring and absorbed magical attacks. Dr. Manhattan is more than a god.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Batman Gotham by Gaslight. A Tale of the Batman, written by Brian Augustin and brought to life by Mike Mignola. Comes a tale from the Victorian era where Batman is hunting down Jack the Ripper.
Your evening attire, sir.
That was not the suit. I need Alfred.
So it's 1889, and while these murders of women are happening all over the place, the general public whispers in the wind that it may be Batman who is committing these crimes. Okay, so we got historic serial murders, we got old-timey gangs, Bruce gets framed, the candlelit mystery is afoot. I loved this one shot, honestly. It's really hard to put down as soon as you start. If you have time, at least watch the animated film because you owe it to yourself. A lot of candlelit. Which way did he go? It's good. It's right up your alley. You'll love it. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, or else we'll be using candles to light this place up, just like Gotham by Gaslight. And we can't have that. You guys are literally the best. Thank you for your support. Number 9, The Doom That Came to Gotham. So written by the lovely Mike Mignola and Hellboy creator Richard Pace, comes a tale taking place in 1928. All these old tales, I love it. So we have Bruce Wayne after he peaced out after the death of his parents. So now, 20 years later, he's returned, and he has to get pretty dark to take out the Lovecraftian horror known as the Lurker on the Threshold. This is a 3-issue miniseries, and it's a dark, weird, fast-paced adventure. I mean, we have demons that come into the plot, like demons, so you should know what you're getting into, especially if you're a fan of Mignola's other work, Gotham by Gaslight, which I mentioned 1 second ago. Number 8, Batman I Joker. This one is a trip. Okay, so we have the Bruce, and he was dumped into a vat of chemicals way back when, and now we see the Bat as the crazy antagonist, which already is super fun. Everybody's all like, all hail the Bruce, hail the God King of Gotham. And he's quite messed up. Yeah, he's like calling out other Gotham citizens, challenging them to kill his enemies before he gets to them himself. It's wild, it's like Mad Max, crazy. And if this isn't wacky enough for you, he wants everybody to challenge him. He wants them to earn the chance to become a god by defeating him in combat. That plus some resurrected villains, it really gets the Hunger Game vibes going. So if you're into some death sport like reading, this is an ideal one-shot. Bob Hall created a quite fun story here.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
And number 7, Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Knights in a Half Shell. Yes, just saying that out loud, I'm like, ooh, let's do it. This comic is so fun. It's written by James Tynion IV. Right off the bat, we see a pizza delivery guy as he drops off the za. And then of course there's a note that says, leave it on the street, and then we see turtle hands creep up out of the sewer. Yep, they come across the Batmobile, and then shortly after, they come across Batman himself. It's a pretty serious take as well. I mean, I know it looks fun because you're like, Ninja Turtles, Batman, sick. Which some fans didn't like how serious it was, but others rejoiced that they could dig their teeth into something after watching the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie. It's a pretty slow start, but once it gets cooking, it's a hell of a lot of fun. The Turtles were transported to Gotham thanks to Krang, alongside their master, Splinter, and of course, archenemy, Shredder. They set up camp in the sewers, of course, but our own Killer Croc stumbles upon them, and then so begins this cat and mouse game with Batman and the Turtles. So Batman finds one of Raphael's side during a fight, and then Lucius Fox confirms it is from another universe. So the 6-issue series is a pretty short read, but Freddie Williams' art will keep you admiring the pages, taking it much longer than you think. Number 6, Justice Riders. Okay, this one was released back in 1997 by Chuck Dixon, and it's a wild tale of the Wild Wild West. Justice Riders is a one-shot that has the Justice League of America take on different roles. Like Wally West is an outlaw who's blamed for the death of Barry Allen. He's like a young guy too. And then Wonder Woman is the marshal. She's the old marshal in town. The 1873 story begins with Marshal Diana Prince's hometown, Paradise. More like Paradust. Am I right, fellas? And it's destroyed by an alcoholic sorcerer named Felix Faust. So she wrangles up her super squad and hits the dirt, heading for El Inferno to get revenge. Wild West anything is a good time. There's a lot of hat tipping, we got sunsets, we got giant rocks that look like fingers coming out of the ground, and of course we got some badass gun holsters and some hate chewing. There's rules when you read this one shot though. You have to do the accent in your head the entire time, that's it. Do your worst Western accent the entire time. Number 5, JSA, Liberty File. Okay, we got some Wild West hootin' and hollerin', but what about some World War II drama? So JSL Liberty File was written by Tony Harris and Dan Jolly and sees the interception of a parcel in which the contents could change the outcome of the war. And then we got Owl, Clock, and Bat stepping in to save the day. So Jack the Grin, known as the albino smuggler, which is what my friends called me when I would steal their supplies for school, he intercepts a communicate and then hides it, and then starts making bids on it. So this is a two-parter, and it's fairly short, but it doesn't waste any time at all. The stakes are high, like right off the bat. So we have these schematics for a new German long-range bomber in the hands of the Joker, right? It's dark, we got some mysterious men in bowler hats, and they're doing their mysterious men in bowler hat things, smoking and whispering in dark shadows. You already know what you're in for, it's a great time. Number 4, Batman Gotham Noir. Coming from the minds of Ed Brubaker and drawn to life by Sean Phillips comes a pulp comic thriller. A notable difference here opposed to our usual Gotham tale is that it centers around Jim Gordon this time. And he doesn't have the best luck, and he's heavy into the booze. He's a private investigator who gets framed for murder as well. So those are the 3 things you just want in life right there. Fans are actually super excited to see these themes come spiraling down to this perfect crime story. It's dark, it's gritty, and most of all, it's realistic. They made Gotham quite interesting here as well because they didn't shoot necessarily for a superhero theme, right? So Jim Gordon finds himself sharing his life story with the only person that'll listen, not God, the Bat. So now Batman already is a noir character, so I'm glad they put the focus more on Gordon here. It felt fresh. You kind of expect it to go one way, but it doesn't, and that's the best part. Number 3, Superman Speeding Bullets. From J.M. DeMatteis and Eduardo Barreto comes the ultimate question of what would have happened if Superman was discovered by the Waynes of Gotham instead of the Kansas Kents. So right off the hop, we see the usual scenario playing out. We got the alleyway, we got the mugger with the gun, and then when it comes down to the mugger shooting Bruce as well, because he cried and he just hates when kids cry, the bullets don't penetrate his skin. And his wet eyes look up at the mugger, and then those wet eyes turn bright red. Yeah, he zapped the shit out of him. Laser eyes for the win. So this Batman is now angry. It cuts to him being older, and he remembers that he could have saved his parents, and it eats him alive. That plus these Superman abilities that he now has, it makes for a very, very entertaining ride. Number 2, Flashpoint. Okay, so one of the biggest upcoming DC movies, and for good reason, the storyline where the Flash tries to go back in time to save his mother from her tragic death, which is not a bad idea at all. This story was released in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, and it starts with Barry waking up with no Flash powers. In fact, the Flash doesn't even exist. In fact, everything has changed. His mother Nora was still alive. Sick. And his father Henry died 3 years prior. Oh. Yeah, so in his own timeline, his dad's actually alive and in jail, but we know this, right? There's no Justice League, and Superman isn't even in the picture. The best part and one plot point that we're most looking forward to in the movie is that Batman in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. So Bruce ended up dying that night, causing his mother Martha to go insane, and then she becomes a Joker. That's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we were all hyped because we saw Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, two huge actors, in such a small opening scene with zero dialogue. So everyone's like, huh, that must have been an expensive day to shoot. Yeah, it was. They had bigger plans for them down the future, and now with recent news of Michael Keaton set to return in the Flashpoint movie, Jeffrey Dean Morgan took to the internet and said, Michael Keaton swooped in and took my gig. Now, I think that's super cool. Ever since Zack Snyder walked away, my whole kind of bit in that world has walked away with him. However, there's always a chat going on. There's always a chat. May I peek into this chat, sir? Because we'd love to see that. We've been kind of begging for it. I don't know. It'll be good either way. We'll see. We shall see. I mean, we'll see it June 2nd, 2022. For now, if it's not delayed even more. And finally, number 1, Justice League The Nail. If you own a car, first of all, congrats. Secondly, you must know the pain of getting a flat tire. It's always at the worst times too, right? Well, imagine if a flat tire was the sole reason Lil Kal-El was never found. Yeah, coming from the mind of Alan Davis, we see this unfold and lead the world into a much different way of living without Superman, without hope. So now Lex Luthor doesn't have anybody to go toe-to-toe with, so that led to him becoming the beloved mayor of Metropolis. The Justice League are to be feared as well. The world has a lot of hatred towards metahumans and aliens. It's great how the Silver Age heroes also kept their costumes in this as well, because they're a lot of fun in this Elseworld story. We see Alan Davis revisit big players like the Outsiders and Batman, which he drew in the 80s. So I definitely recommend adding it to the list, and that's why I put it on number 1 of our list.
Number 10, Mazaz. On Earth 3, things are kind of backwards. Power and strength reign supreme, and those who are superheroes and villains in the Prime Universe are supervillains and heroes respectively in Earth 3. Alexander Luthor, for example, was the most powerful superhero on Earth, going by the name Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. Now, he's technically a good guy, but his power is what I find truly terrifying. Mazaz has the ability to absorb the powers of any superpowered being that he took the life of through his lightning. Using this, he gained all the powers of Bizarro, including invulnerability, self-sustenance, Arctic vision, flame breath, and kryptonite immunity. He got the powers of the Firestorm Matrix from Deathstorm, which are too many to list, the Speed Force abilities from Johnny Quick, and the powers of Hawkwing. While the characters he fought were arguably worse than him, no one from Earth 3 is really good, and he is absolutely terrifying, when he is powered up of course. Number 9, Bump in the Night. For starters, DC's House of Horror is basically a collection of short stories featuring different characters. They are all equally interesting and horror themed. The Possession of Billy Batson and Last Laugh stories are particularly interesting, but for today's video, I think I want to talk about the very first one. Bump in the Night. This short story follows Martha Kent on the night Kal-El arrives on Earth. Jonathan Kent has gone out to explore what exactly caused a big bang and a trail of smoke on the Kent's farm, but he isn't coming back. As Martha worries about where her husband has gone to, she goes back inside the house, but Martha starts hearing bumping and thumping coming from upstairs in the house. Suddenly, a demonic humanoid child crashes through the ceiling and begins attacking her. She tries to run to the barn, but fiery beams of energy fire from the creature, blowing up the barn. She takes refuge in her truck only for the creature to land on the hood, shrieking. It throws the truck across the yard and Martha gets out wounded only for the truck to explode. The creature flies away with the symbol of an S emblazoned on his chest. If you are looking for comic book content, this is the place to find it, so hit us with a subscribe to stay inundated with tons of videos about all your favorite heroes. Thank you. Number 8, Speed Demon from the Amalgam Universe. The Amalgam Universe, where the worlds of Marvel and DC collide, is honestly an amazing place. We get all kinds of crazy mashups like Wolverine and Batman, but while that is incredibly awesome, the one I think may be better for this list would be Blaze Allen, the Speed Demon, or basically the Flash mashed together with Ghost Rider. Yes, it's as crazy as it sounds, and honestly, it's more totally awesome than it is scary, but Ghost Rider is already fast with his motorcycle, so imagine if he didn't even need that. The best part of this is that his cousin, Wally West, becomes another version of Speed Demon, and the two of them work together. It's not something that I thought I needed, but I absolutely did need it. Number 7. Witch-marked Wonder Woman. Years ago, a 12-year-old Diana Prince came upon a ritual being performed at a crossroads in Themyscira to the goddess of magic and witches, Hecate, by her followers. Diana gets grabbed by the followers and Hecate brands her with a witch mark, and she vowed to Hippolyta that one day she would return to use her witch mark to take over the world. Once things start popping off in the 2018 Witching Hour crossover, Earth's magic is beginning to disappear and Hecate is obviously to blame. Hecate activates her witch mark, 5 women who have been branded, including Diana. The witch marked power Diana possesses could rip the world apart and tear holes in reality. It's honestly very insane, and it only gets crazier as she gains the power of the other witch marked. Now I glossed over quite a bit for the sake of time, so I suggest you read the story. Number 6. Dawnbreaker. Now this is like a mix of evil Green Lantern and evil Bruce Wayne. Technically, it's just Bruce Wayne, but after the passing of his parents that fateful night, the young Bruce Wayne comes into possession of a Green Lantern ring. We have seen Bruce Wayne wield a Green Lantern ring before, but this is the dark multiverse. Bruce has an unbelievably strong will, and using his powerful will, he is able to override the programming of the Lantern ring, allowing him to use it to take lives. He creates monstrously terrifying green-like constructs and uses them to not just ruthlessly battle criminals, but anyone who stands in his way, including James Gordon, other Green Lanterns, and the Guardians of the Universe. Number 5. Superwoman. While Superwoman is technically an alternate version of Wonder Woman, originally she was actually the Lois Lane from Earth 3, who on this world was seemingly an Amazon, as she wielded the lasso of submission instead of truth, which is capable of forcing others to do her bidding and forcing them to love her. But this Superwoman had abilities that were more like a Kryptonian's. She was capable of not only everything Wonder Woman could do, but she could fire beams of red-hot energy from her eyes, and she could fly. She created an incredibly toxic love triangle between Ultraman and Owlman of the Crime Syndicate of America, and even had a child with Owlman, but promised to Ultraman that it was his. This was also while she was having another affair with Alexander Luthor. Damn girl, keep him pretty busy, huh? Yikes. Number 4. Raven from the Last 52 Multiverse. The Batman who laughs comes from the Dark Multiverse, which is the flip side of the regular multiverse, composed of worlds where nightmares become real. All the worst case scenarios actually came to be on these worlds. During the final battle between the Batman who laughs and Wonder Woman, Laughs summons different heroes turned villains from across the Dark Multiverse to help him, and among the various characters is a version of the Teen Titans led by a version of Raven who gave in to her father Trigon, who corrupted both her and her Titans into twisted, powerful versions of themselves. Raven herself becomes a red-skinned, armor-clad demon. She actually looks kind of awesome, but she is undeniably evil and ultimately quite terrifying. Number 3. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire they used as their most powerful weapon. Now fast forward, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Johns blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. He recruits Scorch to help him overcome this fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 2. Ultraman. In case you haven't figured out the theme of Earth 3, everyone here is just bad from birth. Ultraman was born on the dying Krypton to Jor-Il, who was able to secure a life pod for his incredibly powerful son, who he saw as his best chance of revenge. While in his life pod, Kal-Il was given the ideology of becoming the strongest possible being, eschewing all weakness in himself and in others. His rocket crash landed in Smallville, right through the home of the dysfunctional couple Johnny and Martha Kent, who he forced to be his parents until he was 7 years old, when he took their lives and burned their home to the ground. He took the name Ultraman, took over the Earth, and created the crime syndicate of America. Now, unlike Superman, Ultraman actually gets more powerful from kryptonite, and the sun is what makes him weaker, which is fine because he will literally just move the moon to block out the sun. And in at number 1 is Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself. Which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker's blood after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state, a state that he is revived from in Crimson Mist, the third novel, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very bloody form, drinking their blood in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave.
Number 10. The Reaching Hand. The amount of bizarre deaths Jimmy Olsen has to suffer in alternate realities, my goodness. In this story featured in the Elseworlds 80-page giant from 1999, we see Bruce Wayne acting as a Lovecraftian detective, aiming to unravel the mystery that is the alleged murder of a elongated man. In reality, something far more dark and sinister has taken hold of the hero and is using him as its vessel to spread darkness throughout the city and take hold of other innocent souls. It reminds me a bit of the bizarre and campy 90s film Cast a Deadly Spell. Like most Lovecraft-inspired horror stories, this one ends with a foreboding cliffhanger. That face. I love that face. Bruce Wayne's face at the end, he's like, oh, what will happen? You're dead. You're gonna die. It's not gonna be good. Number 9. Teen Titans The Lost Annual. This strange story has a campy 60s feel to it. It was originally slated to be released in the early 2000s as an Elseworlds special for Teen Titans, but was later delayed. In the end, it was released in 2008, where it would be referred to in the title as a Lost Annual. But originally, it was intended to be an Elseworlds special, so I'm gonna count it. Here, the Teen Titans team up to try and save President John F. Kennedy, who has been kidnapped by space aliens and replaced by some kind of double. The whole adventure is pretty wacky, which honestly is what makes it so enjoyable. You know me, I love wacky adventures. Reminds me a bit of an original series Star Trek episode. And in case you haven't gathered by now, TOS is my favorite of the Star Treks, so yes. Although I am finally watching Discovery now, so I guess we'll see what happens. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, a quick thank you to all of you for joining me this list, and a reminder to click that like if you want more videos like this one. I personally love exploring Elseworlds with you, so I'd love to do more about it. Number 8. Elseworlds' Finest, Supergirl and Batgirl. This one is kinda ridiculous, but also has some pretty powerful and epic moments. In this Elseworlds story, both Superman and Batman do not exist. Kal-El was destroyed before he could become Superman, though Kara Zor-El still made it to Earth. She took his place as Metropolis's hero, becoming Supergirl. Bruce Wayne never became Batman either, and instead Barbara Gordon guards Gotham as Batgirl, after her parents were murdered by accident instead of the Waynes, who were meant to be targeted. The two women join forces and take on a very sneaky Lex Luthor, who Supergirl had thought of as a close friend and ally initially, and a very jacked Joker. He's like really jacked, like more jacked than you could probably imagine. He's also wearing like a little gym outfit, which is just something. Number 7. A Nation Divided. This Elseworld comic, Superman: A Nation Divided, gives us a look at what Superman would be like if he was around during the Civil War and happened to be a Union soldier. In this story, Superman is known as Atticus Kent and ends up finding out he has superpowers during the Civil War. He quickly becomes the Union's new secret weapon and even takes both Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln on a little flight to give them a tour of the Capitol. I personally love when history and comics meld, and Elseworld stories that posit what if superheroes were real and part of historical events. So for me, this was an interesting story and one that I enjoyed. The whole story is told through letters of various historical figures as well as Kent himself. Number 6. Thrill Killer. Set in the 60s, this Elseworld story follows a doomed Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, aka Richard Graystark, which is his actual name here, although he still goes by Dick Grayson because comics. These two attempt to take on the Joker, who in this world is a woman known as Bianca Steeplechase. In the end, Robin is killed, but so seemingly is the Joker. Oddly enough, in this reality, it's actually Batwoman and Robin who end up inspiring Bruce Wayne to join them. He becomes Batman after Dick's demise. Barbara is also the one with the wealth in this Elseworld story. She is an heiress who became somewhat estranged from her father after the unsolvable murder of her mother. Barbara uses her wealth to purchase Wayne Manor, as in this reality, the Waynes actually lost their fortune during the Great Depression. Very period of them. Very period to lose all of your money during the Great Depression. Or now, during the Now Depression. Number 5. Red Rain. Red Rain has to be one of my all-time favorite Elseworlds tales. It also was an ongoing story that was told over the course of multiple graphic novels released throughout the 90s. In this story, Batman battles vampires but eventually succumbs to them when he is bitten and transformed himself into one of the creatures of the night. He still battles with his new monstrous nature, however, attempting to rebel against it. However, eventually the Joker pushes him too far, causing him to give into temptation and drink his foe's blood. I also like how this is rebel. This is like, get off my lawn, kids. I don't know why I do this when I say rebel. Batman attempts to make sure the Joker will never rise again as a vampire, but eventually it is revealed that he was somehow unsuccessful in preventing this from happening when we revisit this alternate Earth much later down the road. Fans of vampires are sure to also enjoy this world, but as a Batman fan, I also just love the extra layer of moral struggle that vampirism gives Batman. Number 4. Earth 3. Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate, an alternate reality where instead of the Justice League members being heroes, they're villains, and instead of the Justice League, we have the Crime Syndicate. In the place of Wonder Woman on the team, we have Superwoman, an evil version of Lois Lane armed with her lasso of submission. Although I always like to think of it as a whip of submission, but that's something else. You guys can cut that. That might be too kinky. I don't know. I don't know if it's too kinky. You tell me. Internet, you tell me. The heroes of this alternate Earth favor strength above all, and as such only seek to dominate and rule those who they consider to be weaker than them. The Crime Syndicate themselves are composed of members Deathstorm, Owlman, Superwoman, and Ultraman currently, but evil versions of Aquaman, known on this alternate Earth as Sea King, and the Flash, known here as Johnny Quick, were also part of the team at a time. I miss Johnny Quick. R.I.P. Johnny Quick. You dead. Number 3. Elseworld's Finest. I mostly love this story for the art, to be honest. Elseworld's Finest is quite different from the previous story we had with no Superman or Batman, with Supergirl and Batgirl respectively taking their place. This title of this story and two-part limited series was initially based on the old comic series World's Finest, which featured the two heroes of Superman and Batman teaming up on the regular. Basically, it's their long-lasting BFF comic. In Elseworld's Finest, we see the heroes team up to go on an Indiana Jones style adventure, with Bruce rocking some pretty sweet supernatural and mystical armor. The two must work together to face an evil Russian Lex and defeat the villainous Ra's al Ghul in order to save the world and free Lana Lang's father. Number 2. Red Sun. One of the most intriguing Elseworlds when it comes to Superman, and in my opinion Lex Luthor for any Lex fans out there, is Red Sun. Red Sun comes to us from the Elseworlds imprint and aims to answer the question, what if Superman had been raised in the Soviet Union? The result is we get a passionate communist Superman who, instead of standing for truth, justice, and the American way, stands for socialism, Stalin, and acts as a champion of the common worker. Instead of an S on his chest, he wears the symbol of communism, the hammer and sickle. Red Sun was a story written by Mark Miller, which offered us a different look at Lex Luthor as well, who became the president and sort of the hero of the USA, all as a part of his greater plan to satiate his obsession with destroying Superman. So in a weird way, Lex becomes sort of part hero as well as the recognizable part paranoid villain that we've all come to know and love. Number 1. Earth 1. Also known as Earth 1 with the number instead of the letters, so Earth 1 or Earth 1. But it's also confusing because there's multiple Earth 1s. When it comes to some of the DC multiverse, it can actually just get a little confusing in general, as of course there are various Earths that have the same number depending on the continuity we're talking about, New Earth or Prime Earth, not to be confused as well with Earth Prime. Yeah, it can get pretty mathy up in your brain if you're trying to keep track of everything and separate it. But this time around, when I'm talking about alternate Earths when it comes to the number 1, I'm talking about Earth 1, where all of our heroes are just starting out as seen in the Earth 1 series, like Batman Earth 1, Superman Earth 1, Wonder Woman Earth 1. You get the idea. There's a lot of Earth ones. I like how I didn't talk about it was interesting at all, I just talked about how it was confusing. Anyways, if you've read Earth 1 or any of those series, you know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. Enough said.
At number 10, we have Captain America. I know it feels weird to have Cap in the 10th spot on any list about power, but remember who he's up against. Captain America's best trait is his unmatched leadership stat, which for superheroes is a really important angle to consider. But on a list about individual power, I'd say it only goes as far as who he's actually leading and ultimately fighting alongside. But without his strategic advantage, Captain America is still an extremely powerful Avenger and beats out plenty of other contenders that didn't make the list. The combination of his impressive fighting skill and his advanced strength levels is good enough to garner attention, but of course his vibranium shield is what really brings him to another level. Vibranium is a metal that actually absorbs all energy and contains it entirely. This means that whatever the shield is hit with, the metal itself will absorb the recoil almost entirely. Not to mention, it can pack a serious punch when it's thrown and will return to Steve's hand on command. This gives Cap a huge offensive and long-range advantage when he isn't showing off his massively impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. At number 9 is the one and only Spider-Man. It was tough to decide where to put Spidey on this list because he's so versatile, but he's also quite young and inexperienced. Well, at least he's supposed to be. But what really puts him at one ranking higher than the almighty Captain America are his Spidey senses and his healing factor. These two abilities really give Spidey the edge and help to define him as a more agile and crafty hero than many of the others on the list. Where Spider-Man might lack in sheer power, he makes up for in his adept precision and dexterity. And while he may not pack a huge punch in some of the more advanced combat situations that the Avengers face, he doesn't let anyone get the jump on him in any case, because he can always sense what's coming and has very quick reflexes to make the next move before his opponents even realize they'd missed him. In other words, Spider-Man often plays the role of David, while his opponents play the part of Goliath. Another thing that's important to note is that his suit upgrades allow him to gain huge strength boosts, expanding his power levels to a level that may never see its limit. At number 8, I'm putting Wolverine. As the most published comic book superhero ever, Wolverine has had the most experience out of anyone on this list. Not just because of all the things he's done, but also because of all the years that he has lived. His healing factor is so impressive that his age is extended by a great margin, making him appear nearly immortal. In fact, there have been a few times where Wolverine was entirely reduced to his adamantium-coated skeleton, and he was still walking around as if he'd just been a little banged up. But on top of his durability, he's also one of the most balanced heroes all around, which makes him a huge contender on a list about power. He's extremely agile, being quite skilled in acrobatics. He's got a very powerful offensive stat with his adamantium claws. He's also got a stealth stat since he's able to blend in as a civilian when his claws are retracted. He's got insane durability with his whole skeleton being coated in a metal only comparable to vibranium, and even if he takes a massive blow, his healing factor acts so fast and so efficiently that he's back to full health before he's even stood up. He's one of the big guns.
Number 7, Monica Rambeau. With the title of Captain Marvel, it's easy to not fully understand the powers of Monica Rambeau, but they are different to her other Captain Marvel counterparts, and in my opinion, she is my favorite of the characters to take on the title. After being bombarded with extra-dimensional energy emitted by a stolen device, Monica Rambeau acquired the ability to convert her body mass into and control any form of energy of the electromagnetic spectrum. Those energy forms include visible light, radio waves, electricity, X-rays, microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet radiation, cosmic rays, and gamma radiation. But whenever she comes into contact with new forms of energy, such as neutrinos, Monica can mimic that energy's wavelength as well, given enough time, and she'll be able to actually transform into it. As you can imagine, there is a lot she can do with these various forms of energy: flight, speed of light travel, intangibility, invisibility, energy blast and absorption, hologram creation and appearance alteration, size alteration, power boosting, and she can even become a kind of hard solid light. Number 6, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than him. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many more. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected the psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant power boost when he is using the 10 rings. He can use the rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and even use them to levitate and fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate energies from the rings to do many things, including projecting said energy and creating an energy-based blast. And then just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Number 5. Moondragon. It may come as a surprise, but Heather Douglas is actually one of the most powerful human-born telepaths in existence. She gained her power after she trained under the Shaolin monks of Titan, thanks to Thanos' father, Mentor, taking her in. Her telepathic abilities rival and surpass even those of powerful mutants like Professor X. With this power, she has been able to mentally enslave an entire planet of beings who were constantly at war with each other, bringing peace to said planet. She has been in a psionic stalemate with the Sorcerer Supreme, and she's even straight up de-lifed a clone of Thanos who, at the time, had even greater mental powers than Professor X. Her powers are so powerful, in fact, that they can maintain themselves subconsciously, meaning that even if she is unconscious, she will maintain the effects of said powers. A huge part of her character, even the reason for her awesome Moondragon name, comes from the fact that she is, or was, actually under the influence of an extremely powerful entity known as the Dragon of the Moon, who has been manipulating her for a long time, even initially letting Heather believe she had overcome the demon. But thanks to this dragon, she has been able to take on a dragon form where she could move faster than light, survive in space, and was super strong and durable. Number 4. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid, that in a tragic comic book backstory was exposed to Jack and gave him his awesome abilities. Due to the cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts, apparently in honor of his father's love of card games, and not because it's actually his name, basically. His biological structure was reformatted to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength specifically has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. But in addition, thanks to a symbiote energy sub-device, Jack went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from the deep recesses of his brain, which is pretty cool.
At number 3 is Nova. Being basically the protector of the cosmos, Richard Rider's Nova had to make it into the top 20. Being one of the primary members of the intergalactic law enforcement agency, Nova brings a cosmic level of power to the Avengers. And the main ability that really puts him above the rest is his power absorption, which is capable of using an enemy's power against them. And the limits of this power are yet to be truly maxed out, meaning that I'm not sure if we can even know the extent of his power level quite yet. But considering he's been able to weaponize gravity itself with this ability, I'd say there aren't even really limits at all. Of course, when he takes in power, it has to go somewhere, and it's usually emitted as a highly powerful energy beam that can be aimed at any nearby or distant targets. In prime form, he's also been known to travel at near light speeds, which is verging on speedster level. One of his most notable feats is when he sacrifices himself by trapping himself and Thanos in the Cancerverse. This just shows his immense influence and how far he'd go as a protector of not only Earth, but the cosmos as a whole. At number 2 is Gilgamesh. You know that at least one of the Eternals had to make it onto this list, so here he is. Gilgamesh doesn't have a long run as part of the Avengers, but the short time he gives to them is enough to put him nice and high up on this list. Now, most superheroes tend to have superhuman strength and land somewhere on the scale measured in the amount of tons they can lift usually, but we can basically just throw that scale in the garbage because Gilgamesh is off the charts in his strength stat. His strength level is on par with that of Hercules and Thor, only maybe being usurped by the Hulk himself. But on top of his extreme strength level, he is also capable of flight, energy blasts, and a certain level of energy manipulation, which, when all paired together, makes for a massive powerhouse who beats out many of the other members of the Avengers. Finally, at number 1 is a hero who could have arguably made the part 1 of this video, Captain Marvel. Born as a human, Carol Danvers' DNA is fused with Kree genes, thus turning her into a next level superpowered being. Being able to fly 6 times the speed of sound and having an adept energy manipulation skill, there's no wonder why Captain Marvel is considered one of the most valuable members to ever grace the Avengers. Whether she's destroying asteroids with a single punch or surviving an HLA energy bomb, Captain Marvel seems to be everywhere at once. And she sort of can be, given her insane speed and near omniscience with her flash precognition ability. This power allows her to anticipate events all across the cosmos from wherever she is, which is part of what makes her stand out as one of the foremost protectors of the cosmos. It's also just really helpful in anticipating the moves of her opponents before they make them. And although she does acquire this power when she's turned into binary, there are still remnants of it within her to this day. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes. At number 8, we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around to joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive, but that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off The Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is. At number 6, we have one of the most important members of the Avengers and my personal favorite, Iron Man. What could I say to try and convince you of Iron Man's placement on this list? Well, my favorite way of describing Iron Man's sheer power level is that it's technically uncapped. Tony Stark's biggest trait is his immense intellect, which shouldn't necessarily be considered on a list about power as a standalone ability. But when that intellect is able to produce the Iron Man suit, the War Machine suit, and every iteration of Spider armor, as well as not to mention the Hulk Buster armor, it surely should be considered. So I say that his power potential doesn't have a ceiling only because if he's not the most powerful on this list right now, there's plenty of room for him to improve down the line with his inventions. But as he stands, he's still got his own AI system Jarvis, integrated into an all-powerful Iron Man armor which is outfitted with near endless ballistics and energy weaponry. And I'd argue that Iron Man has a certain level of omnipotence as well, because his systems are always tapped into external sources that support him in battle, like drones or even backup armor upgrades on the fly. Okay, at number 5 is Black Panther. T'Challa is not to be messed with, and it's not just because most of his gear is outfitted with all the vibranium anyone could ever hope for. He's also got a level of dexterity and stealth that brings his combat abilities to another level. This could be seen in the comics when he's able to take down Namor not once, but twice, or when he also finds a way to take out the Silver Surfer, which is an insanely impressive feat on its own. But what puts Black Panther above Iron Man for me is that he's got a similar intellect and employs it almost more impressively at times. He's able to create similarly ingenious pieces of technology to start, and much of the time totally on the fly. Like the one time when he creates a device on the spot that blocks Thanos' synapses in his mind, knocking him out there and then, at least for a time. But this is a big moment that shouldn't be ignored. Considering he's capable of this level of technological aptitude, and he's a superpowered being on top of it, it just gives him that extra edge over Iron Man for me. And that comes from a huge Iron Man stan. Although Black Panther is in my top 3 as well. At number 4 we have Hercules. I want to acknowledge that Ares could also easily hold this spot, but I figured that the list only had room for one Greek god. And having been teased in Thor Love and Thunder's post-credit sequence, it's looking like Hercules is set to appear in an upcoming MCU project, and it's about time. Hercules is one of the few characters that has ever been able to contend on an even keel as Thor, which I think speaks to how powerful he is in the comics. Son of the god of lightning, Zeus, Hercules is known as the god of strength, which should be enough to put him on this list to begin with. But what could also convince you would be, I don't know, that one time when he picks up all of Manhattan while facing off against Thor, or the time when he destroys the Thor clone in Civil War, which acts as a turning point for Cap's army. If that's not enough to convince you though, Hercules is also known to run at speeds above 100 miles per hour. Even though most people associate Hercules with Greek mythology, he has a very lengthy run with the Avengers and proves himself as one of their most powerful members ever. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU. But it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers, as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you. The real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men number 4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at number 1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision, and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this number 1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Urthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the #1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot.
Number 10, Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevin Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. On Earth 541, the Starbrand bearer has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Number 9, Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature, enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow. Her master of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to her 2 little antennae she has coming out of her head. It doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life where she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts, form energy shields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. Number 8, Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the Cat People, which is a very silly name, but was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages. Now before you laugh at her for looking kinda silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some awesome abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons, with her leg muscles allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of where you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, and her sense of smell lets her track people. More than that, she can even detect subtle alterations in the composition of perspiration that reflects mood or emotions and is highly sensitive to pheromones. Her claws and fangs can cut through steel, and like Mantis, she is an empath able to enhance and control emotions to a degree.
At number 7, we have the world breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days, there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying. At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger, and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or three-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Dr. Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness, causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers.
Number 3, Sersi. Sersi is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race throughout the ages. Which is similar to, but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Sersi's body is augmented by cosmic energy, and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to anything which isn't stronger than the cosmic energy that augmented them in the first place. Sersi has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25. Her telekinesis also allows Sersi to fly at about 760 miles per hour. She can project cosmic energy in heat, light, or concussive blasts. She has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools. She can teleport, but hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is a super cool ability. Those are all the powers we don't see in the Eternals movie though, because arguably the ability that she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Sersi to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wishes. Number 2, Darkhawk. the coolest name for the strangest mashup of ideas. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney. When he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he stumbled upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Dark Hawk armor. Now this ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave its user quite the set of abilities. Obviously the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, and could manifest mutations from Chris's body at will. The armor had glider wings that allowed him to fly on air currents, but he gained an upgrade that brought his flight to interstellar distances and speeds. Chris is able to heal from even the worst of wounds by just switching back to his human body. The armor can generate force fields, generate dark energy blasts, give its user enhanced vision, and can switch to a bunch of different modes, going transparent, doubling up its armor, and fighting with even stronger weapons. The problem for Darkhawk is that he has this very Iron Man vibe that kind of mixes with a Wolverine vibe due to his fist claws. It also mixes with a bit of a Spider-Man vibe as well, and it all just didn't really allow him to stay relevant past the 90s. And in at number 1 is Hawkeye. Okay, look, hear me out. Yes, Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible. I don't know how you train that, but there you go. He is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He is an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but listing off his abilities isn't really going to give you a proper understanding. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3, number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. In Hawkeye Volume 4, number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, fracturing his neck with a deck of cards.
Number 10, Future State Superman vs. Imperious Lex. While this is a new and intriguing story to be sure, it also takes us back to a time when Lex was the ruler of a planet, first introduced in Superman 164. This planet was originally the battle where Superman and Lex planned to fight one another fair and square, as it had a red sun. So Superman's gonna be on the same level as Lex. However, they learned there were people living there whom Lex helped and eventually bargained with Superman to leave, so they would never know that Superman had beat him. Lex, however, would return to this planet, which was named in his honor as he was their hero, Lexor. In Superman vs. Imperious Lex, it's possible we'll see a return to this planet, as the story tells us Lex is ruling a planet under a red sun and has enjoyed many bountiful and peaceful years there when his planet is invited to join the ranks of the United Planets by one of Earth's representatives, Lois Lane. Lois and Superman obviously, however, don't trust Lex and remain suspicious that he's up to something, seeking to expose his true nature. Superman vs. Imperious Lex is written by Mark Russell with gorgeous art by Steve Pugh.
And if you guys could go ahead and toss us a thumbs up before we go on to number 9, that would be fantastic because it helps us out a lot here at the studio. If we get enough likes, they're gonna let me go home this year. And number 9, Dark Detective. Written by Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora, big changes are coming to Bruce Wayne's life, and we cannot wait any longer. I mean, specifically the Dark Detective. So yeah, we get to see Bruce Wayne on the run after the world thought him dead, so okay. But while a new Batman takes over, and of course the nasty new military organization, the Magistrate, has taken over control of Gotham City. And another thing fans are looking forward to is Grifter is back. Yeah, Cole Cash is not going to have an easy go as Gotham City PD closes in. So after meeting with Luke Fox, we have to wonder, will his day get better or worse? We can't wait to see. And number 8, Superman of Metropolis. Written by Sean Lewis and Brandon Easton. Last time we saw Clark, he left the safety of Earth in the hands of his son, Jonathan Kent. So, of course, he has one thing and one thing only to make sure he does, and that is, of course, to protect his home city. So it's a little stressful now that Brainiac is back and he's attacking. So John takes drastic measures, and then the outcome? Bottle City of Metropolis. Now, Supergirl, she's coming in hot. She's got some things to say. And in the new Bottle City, we see the rise of Jake Jordan, former Manhattan Guardian, looking for a new beginning. And alongside an anarchist named Honest Mary, also looking for a fresh start, with, of course, drastic ways. So now Jake has to deal with that inside the bottle, but fear not, he'll have the help of, drumroll, Jimmy Olsen.
Number 7, Future State Justice League. I feel bad actually ranking this one so low, as it still looks like such an amazing book, and it features some characters I'm both excited to meet and excited to see more of. Future State Justice League introduces us to this new era of heroes as we see Jonathan Kent become Superman, Yara Flores as Wonder Woman, Joe Moline as Green Lantern, my favorite, Andy Curry as Aquawoman, Tim Fox as Batman, and a brand new Flash from somewhere in the great multiverse. This new team keeps their true identity secret even from each other, which makes the suspense even greater when they find their greatest enemies dead and murdered within the Hall of Justice, and realize they are all the lead suspects on the mystery murder case. We also get a side story featuring Justice League Dark, who for some unknown reason were disbanded but now need to reassemble in order to defend the very fabric of reality from the Crow King Merlin. So many awesome mysteries afoot.
And number 6, Teen Titans. Written by Tim Sheridan, we see the world after the original new Teen Titans when they wanted to start their own school, right? You know, guide the minds of young ones as they explore their super side to make the world a better, safer place. And then cut 2 years later, where Titan's Tower is now just a constant reminder of all of those young lives lost, the lives of those young supers. So Nightwing, Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven are going after what made that school go to hell in the first place. So now they have to get help from the mysterious Red X, who we've only seen in the Teen Titans animated show. We can't wait to see what happens there.
Number 5, Future State, Harley Quinn. Of course, you can never have too much Harley in your life, but this series I think will be a good one to grab for Harley fans out there, as well as people maybe just getting into the character now. Stephanie Phillips is writing and promises to bring something new to the character while also taking inspiration from some of the great Harley writers to come before her. The 2-part series is meant to focus on Harley Quinn's independence and what that means for her as she tries to define what kind of hero or villain or something in between she wants to be. Phillips wants to remind everyone of how smart Harley is, while also giving her some more reasons to question both the side of good and the side of evil when it comes to carving out what exactly her own role means. This series will also be setting the stage for Harley's 2021 series to come after it, which will continue the story. So for fans looking to get into that, this is a must read.
And number 4, The Flash. Written by Brandon Vietti, the preview for this one has me pumped up. So we find Barry Allen holding Captain Cold's gun, just locked and cold loaded, and if you're not already intrigued by that, I don't know what else to say. Besides that, we find Barry Allen also without his superpowers. That's right, he's all alone with no backup, so he has no choice but to team up with the other former Flashes to go against Wally West. Yeah, so he has to use the weapons of his foes to save Wally. How badass is that? And on top of that epic storyline, we're also introduced to a new Flash named Kid Quick from Earth 11. And we're expecting our first look at the new speedster in DC's Very Merry Multiverse one-shot coming up. Can't wait.
Number 3, Future State, Catwoman. One of the series I know I am most excited for is Catwoman's, and trust me, you will be too when you hear why I'm so pumped. Automatopoeia is going to be making a comeback, baby! One of my favorite villains. And not only that, Catwoman will be dealing with all sorts of tricksy characters coming at her from all sides as she attempts to take on the Magistrate. She'll be running into a formerly presumed dead Bruce Wayne, but is it really him? Or some kind of impersonator looking to trick Catwoman into falling prey to their trap. She'll also be running into and possibly squaring off with Talia al Ghul, which is likely to be tense no matter what and interesting. This series is going to be written by Ram V with stunning artwork by Otto Schmidt. And you'll likely want to collect the issues considering some of the beautiful artwork featured there as well.
And number 2, Nightwing. Written by Andrew Constant, we see a world with Batman gone. So that means it's time for Nightwing to step up his game. And that nasty magistrate we just mentioned is just making everybody's lives a not so great time. So we get to see Nightwing try and get ahead of the game and protect the city. Awesome. So where else to collect yourself and prepare than Arkham Asylum? They got that It's got that homey feel, you know, it really gets the brain going, gets you in a nice calm zone. And then this is where he meets somebody claiming to be the new Batman. Okay, interesting, very suspicious. So in newly released images, we see a new Nightwing beside the red X, and he's wearing Deathstroke's mask. You love it. And the new Nightwing also carries a new sidearm, so they mean business.
Number 1. Future State, the next Batman. This one is a must-read because it promises to introduce a new and powerful yet mysterious character. Someone who we haven't met yet, but who you might be shocked to learn already kind of exists. He is the estranged brother of Batwing, Luke Fox, which makes him, you guessed it, Lucius Fox's son. What's even more interesting, history-wise, is that this new son actually isn't new. Not really. Tim Fox is the next Batman, and although he prefers to go by Jace in this continuity, we've met him in a previous one before even Luke existed. New Earth. In that continuity, Tim got involved with a gang that was working for a rival and dirty businessman to Bruce Wayne. Once revealed, this caused some pretty big tension and drama between him and his dad. Here we don't know yet just what Jace's past entails, but we do know that he is going up against not just the magistrate, but his father and Gotham's mayor as well. The next Batman series also includes some pretty interesting side series among them. I'm most excited for Gotham City Sirens myself, as well as Batgirls.
Starting off the list today at number 10 is Red Death. The Dark Multiverse was given to us largely by telling the story of multiple different versions of Batman who have each been twisted into a corrupted, villainous version of Bruce Wayne. Brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, the Dark Knights are basically like an evil collection of Batman from across the Dark Multiverse, each one standing in or representing a member of the Justice League. Arguably one of the most popular of these Batmen would be Red Death, an evil Bruce Wayne with the powers of the Flash. In his dark reality, Bruce Wayne was pushed to the limit after losing so many of his sidekicks, which should be a good reason for why he should stop recruiting younglings to be his Robins, but I digress. Believing that he needed to be more brutal in his crime fighting and that he would be better at using the Speed Force than Barry Allen, Bruce took down Flash's rogues, took their equipment, and then used it against his fellow Justice Leaguer. Batman then strapped Barry to his Batmobile, fused it together with the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he drove it all into the Speed Force, absorbing Barry and his powers. Bruce, now empowered with the Speed Force and much more evil than he should be, became the Red Death and joined with the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights. Number 9. Last Son. While the majority of characters given to us from DC's Dark Multiverse are alternates of Batman, thanks to the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights, the Dark Multiverse is a place where everything can go wrong with anyone. Probably the most alarming of the Dark Multiverse alternates would be the dark versions of Superman, and the Last Son, in my mind, stands above the rest. This version of Kal-El came from a dark universe corrupted by the Darkest Night, and instead of crash landing straight on Earth from the destruction of Krypton, Superman's rocket got lost and exposed to the cosmic storm of a black hole. When he finally reached his destination, Earth, the last son of Krypton was burning with the energy of 1,000,000 suns. It sounds super cool, and Last Son looks absolutely amazing, but his whole concept is based on Superman's fear of becoming overcharged by the sun, and his capabilities are through the roof. He's terrifying. Number 8. Robin King. Probably the most depraved, psychotic, and disturbing of the Batman Who Laughs posse would have to be the Robin King. Instead of becoming Batman, this young Bruce Wayne lost his parents just like every other, only it was by his own hand. This Bruce was depraved basically from birth, so much so that it even scared his version of Alfred Pennyworth, who still continued to protect the young Wayne. After the passing of Joe Chill and Bruce's parents, the young fella found that he felt mainly cheer from all that altercation. He was inspired by a robin singing and how the bird is known for taking over the nests of other birds. Under that ideology, he began to put together an arsenal and a utility belt, which he would then use to take out police officer James Gordon and Alfred once they were able to prove that Bruce was responsible for the passing of his own parents. Robin King then stuffed the Flash's mom inside Barry's ring, he took out the Arcane family and obtained the Rot, he somehow somehow managed to take out Swamp Thing, and he got away with it all because everyone thought he was just some kid. This guy even obtained and then modified the anti-life equation, a manhunt consisting of Adam Strange, Balloon Buster, Enemy Ace, Firestorm, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman all fell to this Robin King before he was finally recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, and he even posed some resistance to that guy. All this from an untrained Bruce Wayne. It's too much. Number 7. Dawnbreaker. Of all the Dark Knights recently introduced in Dark Knight's Metal, aside from their leader, the Dawnbreaker stands among the others as one of the most creative and possibly terrifying combinations. This blending of Bruce Wayne with Green Lantern, while based on two heroes, is definitely not a good guy. After Bruce Wayne's tragic loss of his parents, the Green Lantern ring comes to him and grants him the powers of a Green Lantern, right there in the alley. Now, if you know Batman, you'll know that he has likely one of the strongest wills on Earth, even though that's not really talked about. So strong in fact that it allows him to overpower the programming of the Green Lantern ring and do things that Green Lanterns are not supposed to do, like using his monstrous hard-light constructs to take down criminals permanently, or like taking out the whole Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. Stuff like that. He is a crazy powerful version of Batman, and I think it would be really cool if someone could put him on the big screen, in a sort of superhero horror movie, or something like that. Number 6. The Drowned. Bryce Wayne was the Batwoman of the Dark Multiverse Earth 11, and this vigilante had a romantic relationship with a certain Sylvester Kyle. When Kyle lost his life to rogue metahumans, it flicked a switch inside of Bryce, and she decided to systematically take down every single metahuman she could find. The craziest thing is that she did just that, wiping out every single metahuman who walked on land. But Bryce didn't think about the metahumans of the sea. Just 18 months after taking out the last land-based metahuman, Aquawoman and the Atlanteans revealed themselves and returned to the surface from years of self-imposed exile. While they came in peace, Bryce had such a mistrust of anyone, especially these Atlanteans that were obviously also metahumans. When peace talks devolved to an all-out war, Bryce modified her human form with biochemical augmentations like the ability to control water, breathing underwater, healing faster, and bolstering her muscular, skeletal, and bodily tissue density. She gave herself a kind of dark hydrokinesis which could corrupt those fighting against her into ravenous sea beasts under her command, and designed her own army of hybridized sea creatures called Dead Water, all of which was bolstered up by the trident that she pried from the cold hands of a completely decimated Aquawoman. She then drowned the world, and it was then that she was contacted by the Batman Who Laughs. Number 5. Cyborg Batman. Yes, there is a Batman-Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. In this world, this evil Batman cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard, and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went kinda mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all of the villains and then all of the heroes, and even took over Batman's own body since it didn't believe that he could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was totally cool with it. Number 4. Devastator. On alternate Earth -1, Batman and Superman were pals and everything was dandy. Until one day Superman changed and rampaged, turning on humanity. Superman took out almost everyone, and Batman tried his best to help bring his friend back. But once Superman took out Lois Lane and then cut off Batman's arm, there was really no going back from that point. Batman decided to inject himself with the Doomsday virus, turning him into the Devastator, powering him up enough to take out Superman but also making him lose all sympathy. He still retains all the knowledge of Bruce Wayne plus the fighting skill, and he acts as the muscle for the Dark Knights. Truly a monstrous and terrifying Batman. Number 3. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the dark multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he does finally return. The whole story is pretty tragic, but that also makes it one of the best ones to come out of the dark multiverse, in my opinion. Number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is arguably one of the most dangerous versions of Batman who has ever lived, other than Batman himself. If you don't know yet, he is a dark multiverse version of Batman who took down the Joker, but inadvertently infected himself with a strain of Joker toxin. The resulting transformation turns this version of Bruce Wayne into an amalgamation of Joker and Batman. All the intelligence and resourcefulness and martial skill of Batman mixed with the buck-wild, psychotic, murderous mind of the Joker. He is pure chaos and destruction, and he lays waste to his own Bat family and the whole Justice League. He has a pack of Jokerized Robins, and he is the leader of the Dark Knights. He is also a lieutenant of the Dark God Barbados, and he convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming an even bigger threat than even Perpetua herself. And finally, in at number 1, it's Saint Batman. As some of you may know, when Bane broke the back of Bruce Wayne in the Batman Nightfall storyline, Bruce was briefly replaced as the Dark Knight in favor of John Paul Valley, otherwise known as the somewhat extreme crime fighter Azrael. Eventually, the status quo was returned and Bruce took the mantle of Batman back, but as you know, in the dark multiverse, everything can and will happen, and so of course, we see the dark outcome of what would happen if Bruce never got to take back his cowl. In the dark multiverse version of Batman Nightfall, John Paul Valley doesn't return the mantle, and instead, believing himself to be the best successor to the Batman name, he defeats Bruce Wayne and the entire Bat family. Over the next 30 years, John Paul, now going by Saint Batman, has destroyed and rebuilt the city of Gotham. He stripped Bruce of his arms and legs and keeps Bruce on life support, just trying to get Bruce to admit that John Paul was the right choice for the role of Batman. Unfortunately, Saint Batman had crossed the wrong people, and he suffered a pretty brutal defeat at the hands of Lady Shiva, the son of Bane, and a restored cyborg Batman.
Number 10, Superman Jr. is no more! Exclamation point. Remember that time that Superman Jr. quit? No? Well, you can if you read this Elseworld story. This is another Elseworld story out of the Elseworlds 80-page giant from the 90s. Seriously, this book is chock full of interesting and strange stories. In this one, Superman Jr. ends up quitting the superheroic game, much to Batman Jr.'s dismay, believing his dad will be around forever, so he's not needed. He's like, I quit, I'm over this. My dad's got this for life, for longer than life. I think you know where this is going next. Superman appears to die while taking a net full of dangerous missiles to safety in the emptiness of space to explode in. Supes Jr. then feels terrible, misses his dad, the whole world goes into a tizzy, and eventually Superman Jr. is inspired to return. I don't know if people use the word tizzy anymore, but I just did, so there you go. I'm making it a thing again. He helps Batman Jr. save some guys from an earthquake where they end up being trapped under tons of rock and snow. In the end, however, it's revealed that Superman faked his death in order to influence his son to return to his job as a hero, and everyone has a good laugh about it. Ha 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 ha! Oh, faking your death is such good fun. This story also features such amazing lines as Batguy/Bat Jr. I kid you not, he is called Batguy in this comic, asking Supes Jr., what's the true poop on this? And Superman Jr. responding with a rhyme. Rhyming on your father's grave, Superman Jr.? How distasteful. Number 9. DMT's rockumentary, The Lex Record Story. How about a story where we get the history of how Lex became the head of the most successful record label ever, representing all kinds of superheroic musician talent, and how he ended up selling the label to Darkseid. That is another story which comes to us from the Elseworld 80-page giant, and it is a delight. I promise I'm gonna have other stories that are not from this comic, but just let me get these out of the way, my friends. They're just so good. What a strange story this is. One wherein Superman is part of a superheroic Beetle-like group with Barry Allen, Green Arrow, and Aquaman. Oh, and he's the John Lennon of the group who is tragically killed. And I never knew I needed to see Martian Manhunter as a rock star, but I definitely did need that, and so do you. And before I move on to our number 8, if you are enjoying this list, be sure to let us know and show it by giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Number 8. Superman/Batman. Absolute power! This comic is an interesting one. We are talking about a world in this story arc where Superman and Batman were reimagined as the only heroes. Both of their parents were wiped out at a young age, and Superman was never raised by the Kents. Instead, they were taken in and raised by Saturn Queen, Lightning Lord, and Cosmic King of the Legion of Supervillains. They created a fascist world which they collectively ruled with an iron fist, eliminating any and all opposing heroes who rose up or attempted to do so anyways. If you don't believe me, just look at the end of the first issue in this arc, which ends with Wonder Woman awakening and recruiting Uncle Sam. Yep, that's just how this story do. Number 7. Son of Superman. The 1999 Son of Superman tells a story where John Kent works alongside a group called the Supermen to discover the truth behind what really happened to his father, all as he's realizing just who his father really was, which his mom, Lois Lane, kept a secret, and as he's just realizing himself that he has superpowers. He doesn't even initially realize that Clark Kent and Superman were the same person, but initially instead suspects his mother was having an affair with the costumed hero Superman. Oh boy, John. In the end, they discovered that his father is still alive and had been kidnapped and held prisoner all these years by Lex Luthor with help from Martian Manhunter. Ooh, it does not look good on you, Martian Manhunter. It's not very nice. In the end, this plot is revealed, and despite John being new to heroics, he goes up against Lex, and the good guys end up prevailing. My favorite part, admittedly, is when John calls Lex's ponytail outdated. So 90s. Just gotta love that. Also, I just love that Lex has a ponytail in this. I also just love that this story ends with most of the older crew of Supes retiring, paving the way for a new era of supers like John himself. For me, Elseworld stories that end like this, I'm like, I wish this could be the way of DC. Just let some of these people retire. Let's get some fresh blood in here. We've got a lot of sons and daughters and such. Number 6. Batman in Darkest Night. All my Tales of the Dark multiverse fans out there are likely already familiar with this story, if not the original telling of it, then at least the dark retelling of it. You might know the version of Bruce Wayne from Earth -32, but for this multiverse story, we're talking about the version of Bruce that inspired him from the non-dark Earth, just Earth 32, no negatives needed. This version of Bruce is introduced to us in Batman in Darkest Night, a 90s comic that gave us an alternate story, one where Bruce Wayne, instead of becoming Batman, becomes the Green Lantern in Hal Jordan's place, being chosen by Abin Sur instead. In this reality, Sinestro becomes Green Lantern, Bruce Wayne's biggest foe, and the Joker never existed, as Green Lantern prevents the accident which created him at Ace Chemicals. Here, Catwoman is also Star Sapphire, which I honestly just need more artwork in my life of that whole thing. I'm just like, more Catwoman Star Sapphire artwork, please. Give it to me. Number 5. Batman/Captain America. This has got to be one of my favorite stories out there. It's the team up we've all been waiting for, Batman and Captain America together. I actually love when these two team up. Here we see them taking on each other's main nemesis, featuring Cap's Red Skull and Bat's Joker. There's also a bit of a sidekick swap where Cap partners with Robin and Batman partners with Bucky, and in the end, of course, even Joker admits that Red Skull is so evil, even he is not interested in working with him. He may be a criminal lunatic, but he is an American criminal lunatic. When it comes to German World War II soldiers, even Joker isn't interested in crossing that line. And in the end, he and Red Skull end up squaring off themselves themselves and fighting one another as well after Joker finds out Red Skull's true allegiance. I just love the Joker's like, I might be crazy, but like, this is too crazy for me. Not about that. Number 4. Batman / Houdini, The Devil's Workshop. For all my Gotham by Gaslight fans out there, here's another stylistically appealing Elseworlds story for you. This one evokes the feel of watercolors and also has some really pretty letters. It's really pretty to look at and features Batman teaming up with Houdini to fight vampires. What more could you want, I ask you? It also gives us a cool alternate Joker with Mad Jack Schadenfreude. The art is truly so good here, I must share with you the names responsible. Howard Chaykin and John Francis Moore are the writers, with art by Mark Chiarello and letters by Ken Bruzenak. Just a stunning read. You gotta check it out. Number 3. DC The New Frontier. Not only is this a beautiful world to get lost in, it is super stylized by the late and great Darwin Cook, who passed away in 2016. This Elseworld story paints our heroes as outlaws operating in the post-Korean War time period, where space is truly the new frontier. And being that it is, the story here is primarily led by protagonists and heroes Martian Manhunter and Hal Jordan. Also, I just gotta say, I love when Martian Manhunter gets to be like the main protagonist in a story. I feel like we don't hear enough from him usually. Maybe I just need to read more of his standalone series. Maybe that's what I need to do. The art style is simple and classic, and I also just really love the explosive use of color as well. It's a visually compelling series that I highly recommend checking out. Number 2. Earth 2. Earth 2 is home to many awesome heroes like Val-Zod, Superman, Power Girl, and Helena Wayne's Huntress. It is home to the superhero team known as the Wonders of the World, and while some of the original team is gone, we are introduced to new team members who take their place. And hey, we still got the golden oldie Alan Scott. I personally am just a big fan of both Power Girl and Helena Wayne and their team ups together, so Earth 2 for me, when it comes to alternate realities and worlds and their stories, has got to be one of my favorites personally. Number 1. Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come has to be one of the most beautiful Elseworld stories that takes us to an alternate future where there is a great divide and sort of war in the superhero community, following Superman's choice to retire. He does end up returning to the world of heroics at the behest of Diana, aka Wonder Woman. Kingdom Come was a story originally written by Mark Waid in response to a rise of anti-heroes in the comic world. And in the story, this is exactly what you see some of the classic heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Alan Scott go up against. These new heroes whose ideologies are much more harsh and violent by comparison. Much more edgy. The artwork, of course, is done by one of the most amazing artists to this day in the biz, Alex Ross, and is all hand painted. We also get to end it with, of course, Superman and Diana becoming parents of like a cool baby, and then also they're like, hey Batman, you wanna also help us raise this super baby? I just love that. I love the three of them like parenting together. I think that's adorable.
Number 10. Emma Frost. She's probably the biggest name on this list. It almost feels like everyone knows her powers, but someone suggested her in the comments, and well, she's awesome. Emma Frost possesses telepathic abilities on a similar level to Charles Xavier. She's been referred to as an Omega-class telepath and has demonstrated the ability to stalemate Exodus and overcome telepaths such as Nate Gray and Rachel Summers through greater experience and skill. With her telepathy, Emma Frost can create psionic shields, telepathic cloaking, telepathic illusions. She can absorb information and upload information into others. Emma can project one's astral form from their body onto the astral planes or the physical planes. She can inhibit others' powers, induce pain, erase a person's memories, and heal mental trauma through psychic surgery. She has intuitive multilingualism, mind control, can create mental links, induce mental paralysis and sedation. She can alter others' minds, cause a kind of mental amnesia. She can telepathically detect and track others, not to mention produce psionic blasts and psionic lightning. And that's not mentioning her secondary mutation of a diamond form. This grants her super durability, strength, and stamina, as well as psychic immunity, but at the cost of her psychic powers. Number 9. Black Tom Cassidy. Black Tom Cassidy is the cousin of Sean Cassidy, who's Banshee, and he was originally a longtime crime partner to the villain Juggernaut. But his powers are interesting to say the least. Originally, his mutant power was bioorganic thermokinetic blasts, generating concussive blasts of force through any wooden medium. Normally, it was forgive my pronunciation, a shillag, which is a traditional Irish wooden fighting stick. Tell me if I messed it up in the comments, please. After a fight with Cable, doctors grafted a wood-like substance onto his wounds, healing him and allowing him to channel his bioblast directly through his fists. But as a result of a genetic virus, the substance spread over Tom's whole body, turning him into a Groot-like looking dude, which actually worked to his benefit as the secondary mutation gave him plant growth, allowing him to grow to immense size, superhuman strength, a healing factor, chlorokinesis, which is control over plant life within his vicinity. He could distribute his consciousness among plants he controlled, and Cassidy could drain the life force of organic beings. He eventually returned to a human form, but kept the capacity to control plants to a limited degree, mainly focusing his powers on wood specifically, and using the energy channeling aspect of his powers, he could increase his striking power to generate protective shielding. Number 8. Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw is a mutant that you'll probably best recognize for being the Black King of the Hellfire Club, or the guy who somehow took out Darwin in the X-Men First Class movie. I still think that was dumb. His powers are actually a bit different from that movie though. Shaw has the ability to absorb energy, specifically all forms of kinetic energy directed at him, and use it to enhance his strength, speed, and stamina. This includes physical damage such as that sustained in battle, and kinetic blasts such as Cyclops' optic blast or Gambit's explosions. That's why you'll sometimes see him punching walls, being hit by his own underlings, or allowing himself to be hit by his foes in order to build up more and more of the kinetic energy to empower himself. He can also absorb and use other forms of energy such as electricity and magical energy, as shown in Avengers Academy when fighting Hercules. He can build up and store this energy and release it whenever he chooses. His biggest power, however, comes in the form of being such a powerful and influential figure in the Hellfire Club. Number 7. Manifold. Originally, Manifold was thought to be a teleporter, but his powers are much more than just teleportation. Eden actually has the ability to communicate with the universe and kind of ask it for certain things, and in turn the universe would change and mold to do what he wanted. So for teleportation, for example, he's actually kind of creating the Einstein-Rosen bridge and folding space to allow himself, or whatever he wants, to be teleported from wherever he is to wherever he wants. It's the same thing when he creates portals. He's used the ability to fold space around him to make him appear invisible, and he can even fold space around beings and things, like when he teleported a bit of the sun's plasma to his hand and folded space around it so it wouldn't be able to hurt him, which is a crazy thought. Even though this ability only works in his native reality, it seems like potentially an incredibly powerful ability. Number 6. La Bandera. First appearing in Wolverine Volume 2, number 19 in the December of 1989, La Bandera is said to be the daughter of a supporter of Fidel Castro, and her mutant ability is basically to be an awesome leader, which in turn apparently powers her secondary mutation. So, her first mutation is as an empath, able to influence the emotions of others, which she mainly used to inspire people to fight against oppression, and then in turn the amount of followers she had would power her energy projection powers, which she would channel through her staff. So if she has no followers, then there's no energy projection. But if she's using her empath abilities properly, then she should always have followers, right? She began fighting dealers, who she followed to the South American country of Tierra Verde, which at that point was ruled by a harsh and corrupt dictator. She teamed up with Wolverine to fight the dictator, but unfortunately she passed away at the hands of Zeitgeist in 1995 and hasn't really been talked about since, like, at all. Number 5. Blindfold. It's interesting that Blindfold wears a blindfold, as she was born with no eyes or eye sockets for her to blind with a fold. But don't think being unable to see is some kind of handicap. Blindfold is wildly powerful. Blindfold's powers are psychically based and are strongest in telepathy and wielding astral energy, which she can make solid to do a number of things, including creating armor, weapons, force fields, and energy blasts, and using it to cast her astral projections into the physical world. Using her telepathy, sometimes in conjunction conjunction with the astral plane and its energies, Ruth is capable of astral travel, psychometry, precognition, retrocognition, clairvoyance, psychic possession, mental influence, and she even has some chaos manipulation. She also has a degree of telepathic resistance, meaning telepaths can't read her mind, but they can still possibly attack it and possess it and all that fun stuff. And in at number 4 is Destiny. After talking about Ruth, it seems like a logical shift to talk about her possible great-grandmother, Irene Adler. Irene Adler, otherwise known as Destiny as a mutant, has a long history going all the way back to the 19th century, and she was even in a relationship with Mystique all the way back when. While she has her eyes, unlike Blindfold, Irene is indeed physically blind, but it's okay as she could still see the future. That's because Destiny has the mutant power of precognition, able to mentally scan the probability spectrum of alternate futures, and by concentrating, she could focus on only the most probable alternate futures. She could scan the alternate futures that existed from 1 second away up until those that existed 15 minutes away, but she could be 97% accurate if her predictions were 10 seconds away or less, allowing her to basically see what she was doing even though she couldn't see what she was doing. Number 3, Emma Steed. Emma Steed is actually the Black Queen of the London Hellfire Club. If you are noticing a lot of Hellfire Club members here, that's because there are a lot with very cool powers and not a lot of people know much about them at all. For example, Emma Steed here has a rare form of telepathic power called psionic skinning. This basically allows Emma to create blades of pure psionic energy to attack and disable her foes. These blades aren't purely for physical attack. They actually allow her to do a number of things like warping the minds of people, igniting pain sensors, destroying physical portions of their brain, and destroying psionic forms or astral projections. Using this ability, she was able to de-life the Shadow King, who is an incredibly powerful telepath. As a secondary result of her powers, she is basically immune to any type of psionic or telepathic attack, with her presence being absolutely destructive to telepaths. Number 2, Cora of the Burning Heart. Can we just get an applause for literally the coolest name ever? Like, Cora of the Burning Heart. That's awesome. Cora of the Burning Heart is a mutant from Morocco where she served as an assassin and primarily used her power only to boost her own abilities in battle, thanks to the Iraqi being really stubborn, honor-bound fighters. But Cora's abilities can indeed help others as well. Cora's heart is an internalized combustion furnace, which generates life force energy. Thanks to that energy, she gets this really awesome looking flaming skeletal appearance, and she uses this constant energy source to give herself incredible physical capabilities, as well as boost up the powers of others around her to even greater heights. She was a member of the X-Terminators alongside Cable, and she is also a part of SWORD. Also, Cora of the Burning Heart. Sorry, just wanted to say it again. Super cool. Number 1, Amelia Vaught. Amelia was a mutant born with the ability to transubstantiate solid matter into vapor that she can control, and honestly, it's such a great ability. Seeing the things she can do with this ability is really cool. I said she can transubstantiate matter, and that is including herself and other people. When she turns herself into vapor, she is obviously unharmed by physical attacks, but can then fly through the air as vapor and pass through small holes or cracks. But the vapor is still physically there, which means she can still move objects as vapor. She has also turned her allies into vapor to get them out of dangerous situations, substantiating them beside her. And she's even stolen weapons off of enemies, turning them into vapor, which she then reformed in her own hands. But wait, there's more. Using the astral plane, Amelia is able to transport herself and anything else across the surface of the globe in an instant, even summoning distant people to herself by teleportation, converting them into mist and then bringing that mist into her presence to be reformed. It's just super cool. In at number 10 is Beltane. Beltane is a mutant you may likely not have heard of. Her real name is currently unknown, but we know she was part of a group of Romani gypsies. She was captured by the Latvian monarch and awesome supervillain Dr. Doom and experimented on, which activated her latent mutant abilities, and also set off her desire to overthrow his rule with a group of other escapees. Now, Beltane's ability is the secret weapon of her group. She has the ability of fear projection, which means that she can physically project a manifestation of whatever the person she is facing most fears, psychically messing with and almost torturing her victims. So when fighting Wolfsbane, for example, Beltane made the hero see a projection of her not so nice father. Probably a mistake, as Wolfsbane eventually took her down in an animalistic rage, but hey, it's still a cool power. Coming in at number 9, Wolfsbane. Speaking of Wolfsbane, Rain Sinclair has the mutant ability that I wish I had when I was a kid. She can turn herself into a wolf at will and can even go into a transitional form that is basically a close to a werewolf without being a werewolf type of thing. In fact, she is basically a werewolf, but with none of the drawbacks of the monster. She retains all her faculties, minus not being able to talk and just being a little bit feral, and is not forced to change only at night. Rain grows much larger than her human form when she changes and gains access to some enhanced strength, which, coupled with the body of a wolf, grants her enhanced speed and reflexes as well. She gains heightened senses similar to a wolf. The thing with Wolfsbane is that she is both a wolf and a human, so she gains the benefits of both, like almost stacking on top of each other. Unlike wolves, or humans for that matter though, she does have an enhanced healing factor and enhanced vision as well, so double thumbs up. Number 8, Abigail Brand. Abigail here is an interesting character. She is technically a human-alien hybrid, as her father hails from the planet Axis, but it's actually her human mother who Brand inherited her mutant abilities from, that allowed her to join S.H.I.E.L.D. and then SWORD as an agent and hero. So what are said abilities? Well, she has a form of pyrokinesis known as tactile pyrokinesis, which means that Brand can coat at least her hands in flames that are potent enough to burn through most metals via tactile contact. She can use her abilities to warm up others, but has enough control that she can also set others on fire. So she has some versatility with said abilities. I somewhat kind of prefer her form of pyrokinesis because, I don't know, I just swear there are way too many fire-based heroes who seem to all do similar things. So at least Abigail has her own brand of fire. Sorry, the dad jokes are in full force today. Number 7, Jason Wingard. Jason Wingard, otherwise known as Mastermind, is basically an illusionist, but a very, very powerful one. He can psionically manipulate the senses of other people, causing them to see, hear, touch, smell, and or taste things which do not actually exist, or see, hear, touch, smell, and or taste real things in ways that they would not do naturally. So, for example, he can seem to make a solid wall appear in an empty space, or he can make himself look and sound like a different person, or look and feel like a wall, or even seem invisible. Since his power only affects the mind, his illusions cannot be recorded with cameras or anything like that, but his power is so strong that even if his victims know they are being subjected to an illusion, they will still react to the illusion as if it were reality, unless they can rid themselves of all suspicion that it is indeed reality, which sounds a little confusing. Basically, if Mastermind creates the illusion of a wall, most people, even if they know it's an illusion, will still be unable to walk through that wall. His most famous usage of his power, in my opinion, is when he attempted to manipulate Jean Grey, which led to that whole Dark Phoenix thing. Good job, dude. Number 6, Sunspot. Roberto da Costa is another mutant that a lot of people have heard of, especially in the more recent stories that have been coming out of Marvel. But that doesn't mean everyone knows his powers. Bobby da Costa's mutant ability allows him to store solar energy in his cells through a similar method to the way we store energy when we eat food. He can then release it when necessary to enhance his physical strength, usually with the side effect of his body being cloaked in darkness because he drains all the ambient light from his skin, which sounds really cool. The enhancements to his strength through this radiation have allowed him to knock down an alternate universe Hulk, even drawing blood and even restraining Gladiator of the Shi'ar. But other than his physical enhancements, he has also used the energy he absorbs to fly faster than light speed, use pyro and thermokinesis, firing blasts of heat and dark solar plasma, as well as using photokinesis directing light. He's also incredibly tricksy, displayed when he recently manipulated get Iska the Unbeaten. I just love this character. Number 5, Trevor Fitzroy. Trevor here, who goes just by Fitzroy, is actually from Earth 1191. There, he was the illegitimate son of Anthony Shaw, the Black King of the Hellfire Club. Trevor's mutant ability was to drain other living beings of their life force, converting it into energy and absorbing it into himself, usually disintegrating his victims. With this life force, he can do a few different things, like opening temporal wormholes to travel across time and space, teleportation, shifting objects into different time frames, altering the flow of time to return people or objects to a previous incarnation, and freezing people in a type of stasis. The thing is, the usage of his power depends on the life force he absorbs. So for example, one wormhole would be equivalent to one person's life force. It's a little scary, to be honest. He did get a big power boost in the Bishop the Last X-Man series, where he tries to become time itself. He is a super cool and super dangerous character. Definitely check him out. Number 4, Harold Leland. Harold Leland was an alcoholic and obese corporate lawyer and also a mutant with the abilities to increase the mass or gravity of a person or object within his line of sight. He can use this ability to increase mass all at once or over time, slowly increasing the more a victim struggles. The power has shown to even break the ground beneath a target depending on the strength of that ground. So for example, there was a time that he sent Wolverine from inside the Hellfire Club all the way through the floor and the ground into the sewers. Also, the human targets would suffer great strain in their muscles, particularly in the heart, with the possibility of suffering physical damage. And if Leland uses his power on an item, that item could crumble if it wasn't particularly durable. Leland joined the Hellfire Club, an elite social club for the rich and wealthy located in New York's 5th Avenue, under Sebastian Shaw. He isn't the most impressive fighter, but his ability has come in handy more than a few times. Number 3, Phantom X. I honestly kinda dread talking about Phantom X, but I also completely love this guy. When I first read a comic with him in it, I did not fully understand his power, and I still don't really, so now I'm gonna try and explain something to you that I do not fully understand myself. Cool? Cool. So basically, Phantom X, or Charlie Cluster 7, or Weapon 13, or Jean-Philippe, if that's what you want to call him, was experimented on by Weapon Plus and was genetically grown and evolved using Sentinel technology. Thanks to this, he actually has, or had, 3 brains for independent parallel processing, nanoactive blood, and his primary nervous system is actually a detachable techno-organism called EVA, or EVA. So there's some stuff to unpack there. EVA, or EVA, can fly herself and can generate bioelectric charges to be used as weapons, with Phantom X being both telepathically and symbiotically linked to Eva. His multiple brains allow him to think like a sort of supercomputer similar to Sage, but it also gives him access to 2 extra personalities, a charmer and a super deadly mutant hunter. He can create extremely powerful illusions and can enter a trance state where he can rapidly heal, and his self-supremacy over his body and mind allows him to overcome pretty much anything to complete his mission, including mind control. I can't talk too much more about him without taking forever, but know that he has enhanced senses, is a dope fighter, and does not create any kind of smell. Please look into this character and try to make sense of him, because I need help. Number 2, Somnus. Carl Valentino is actually a new member of Earth's Mutants, first appearing in Marvel's Voices Pride #1 in June 2021. But canonically, he's been around for a while. He and Dakin actually had a one-night stand in 1967, a one-night stand in which Dakin dreamt of them having an entire life together, which caused Dakin to retrieve Carl's body in the modern day and bring it to Krakoa for revival. Except this dream was caused by Carl himself. That's because Somnus has the mutant power of Wannaromancy, which I'm almost certain I mispronounced, but I'm kind of proud of myself that I think I didn't. This means he has the ability to enter, broadcast, and even control dreams at will. He can render his opponents unconscious and is also able to bring others into his dreamscape. It's such a unique and interesting power, and it can allow him to live entire lifetimes within a dream, which in my nerd mind tells me he can learn and improve upon skills while dreaming, but don't take my word on that, I just kinda made that up. Only time will tell the multitude of ways his power shall be used in the future. Number 10, Vanisher. Vanisher actually has the mutant ability of teleportation, but unlike mutants like Nightcrawler, Vanish's teleportation teleporting ability is completely psionic in nature and actually causes him to go through a series of extra-dimensional portals. But he does it so quickly he didn't even realize that was what he was doing. There is actually an instant where he tries to explore his powers more and stops his teleportation partway through, ending up trapped in the Dark Force dimension by its inhabitants. Vanish can also use his ability to bring a certain amount of mass other than himself with him when he teleports, which in one case allowed him to teleport himself and about 8 others from Southern California to Genosha. To add to that, Vanisher can actually also teleport any part of his body, kind of like how the Spot did it, but he does it so little that it's almost kinda not worth mentioning. Number 9. Tag. Brian Cruz, the mutant known as Tag, has the awesome ability called the Pariah Effect. Now this ability allows Brian to psionically tag a target, causing that person to emit a psionic signal that could make everyone, or even a select group of people in an area, either run away from or run towards and dogpile on top of the selected target, or who he likes to call it. The distance of this game of tag was about 100 feet, and everyone affected by the ability, excluding the one tagged, was fully aware of what they were doing while not being able to control their own actions. It's such an interesting ability, and it's fun as well because he can also tag a target with the effect of having that person run away from themselves, so they would just be uncontrollably running until he cancelled the effect. He was part of the group called the Helians until he lost his power on M-Day and passed away in a missile attack shortly afterwards. But luckily, Tag was resurrected on Krakoa, and hopefully we will get to see him use his abilities again at some point. Number 8. Hijack. Marvel's mutant David Bond actually has absolutely nothing to do with British 007s. Instead, David is the mutant known as Hijack with the technopathic ability to assume control over vehicles. It's kind of so oddly specific, and it makes me wonder if the ability works for things like bicycles or like scooters or something. This power gives me more questions than answers, to be perfectly honest. Look, he's controlled buses to ram into sentinels, and he's even been able to control an entire SHIELD helicarrier, and even a fleet of them at one point, which is definitely no small feat of its own. His abilities have even allowed David to control technological suits of armor, but curiously he couldn't control sentinels. Now, while his power could be used in quite a lot of different ways, David wasn't always the most useful of characters, so we didn't get a whole ton of him to analyze. Number 7. Primal. Adam Berman first appeared in X-Men Unlimited number 16 in July 1997, and his story arc was one I actually had a good time reading. It was oddly unique, at least to me. Adam is a mutant, but his ability is a transformative one, and he can easily hide it, which allowed him to kind of play himself off as a non-mutant even though he was trying to join the Xavier Institute. That's what I gathered at least. It was kind of confusing. So you should read his story, but we are here for his abilities, not his story. And those said abilities almost remind me of other superpowered beings like the Hulk and even the Lizard, because Adam can transform into a totally primal reptilian-like form, growing about 50% bigger than his normal self and gaining red glowing eyes. But his physical enhancements are quite impressive. His strength boosts to around a level 10, with the highest level being a 100. But level 1 super strength is capable of pressing 800 pounds through a 25-ton range, so level 10 is nothing to scoff at. Look, just go read his story, okay? Number 6. Adam X. Another Adam! Almost like I liked that name or something. Adam Nuramani is honestly a bit more interesting than the last Adam though. He was a genetically created hybrid of both Emperor Deken of the Shi'ar Empire and Catherine Summers of Earth, created in an attempt to introduce more genealogies to the Shi'ar Empire. Now just as his origin is unique, so are his powers. Adam has the ability of electrokinetic hemopyrokinesis, or if you don't want to hurt yourself like I just did, you can also say sanguine combustion, which also sounds super cool. It basically means that he can send an electric surge through oxygenated blood, which leads to ignition of the electrolytes present in said blood, causing a person to burn from the inside out, which could result in a little subtle warming effect, or it could completely disintegrate a person. So there's a lot of wiggle room here, which is cool. But thanks to his Shi'ar side of things, he also has enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, stamina, speed, vision, and healing. So couple all that with his awesome fighting skills and the cool cybernetic retractable claws, and Extreme is someone you don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 5 is Shatterstar. So I was like this close to including Longshot on this list, but he doesn't even consider himself a mutant, and there's a whole bunch of weird time mojo-verse stuff going on, so instead I'm going to do his father and or son, which is a whole other thing in itself. Look, all you need to know is we're talking about Shatterstar. Gavidra 7 learned the arts of battle as a warrior in arenas on Mojo World, where he developed both a sense of honor and incredible fighting skill, but those aren't his abilities. He possesses a large superhero starter pack. Superhuman strength, speed, agility, stamina, durability, senses, reflexes, agility, dexterity, coordination, balance, plus a regenerative healing factor and even enhanced learning ability. Curiously though, he actually has hollow bones, which makes him a shim lighter than you would think he is, but also further boosts up his natural physical skills. The cool part of Shatterstar though are his Mojoverse swords, which he can use through his mutant ability to channel powerful vibratory shockwaves, which can be absolutely devastating but also kind of drains him of energy. But after his Mojo time, he can now create X-shaped portals as well that have to be linked to another person who acts as an anchor for said portals. These also drain him of energy, and he has a cooldown of about like 4 days before he can do it again, because this powerhouse needs some kind of balancing. Number 4, Aurora. In the last part of this series, we talked about Northstar, but that mutant has a sister, and guess what? Surprisingly, the mutant gene runs in the family. That shouldn't be surprising really, because genes and all that. Wow, this is a horrible intro. Janine Marie Beaubier, otherwise known as Aurora, can generate a bright light, which according to the wiki is equivalent to 500,000 foot candles. Or if you aren't weird, it's about as strong as a lighthouse light, which is also an extremely weird frame of reference, but I digress. She and her brother can both do this by varying the rate of acceleration of the molecules of their bodies out of phase with one another, thereby generating a cascade of photonic discharges. The light can actually do some interesting things, like she can make a calming light that can even interrupt psychic control, or she can make concussive light blasts. Or, which is even cooler, she can even create lightning blasts that actually do some considerable damage. Like her brother, she can also move incredibly fast, and thanks to her molecular manipulation, she can also be extremely durable, heal quickly, and even withstand all the g-force of moving so fast without doing those insane weird breathing exercises that pilots have to do. Number 3, Exodus. This character is one a lot of you may actually know is pretty powerful, as he does have a seat on the Krakoan Quiet Council and is insanely capable. Exodus actually began as Grand Duke Benet du Paris in the 12th century as a nobleman hailing from the medieval France. He was sent to fight in the Crusades in the Holy Lands, and on his journey out there, that's when his mutant powers awoke. And he even gained further enhancements from the mutant apocalypse, becoming one of his champions before being entombed until the modern era when Magneto awoke him and teamed up with him. He is one of the most powerful mutants alive. He is an Omega level psionic, using the abilities of telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, and empathy. His level of telekinesis is so fine-tuned that he can even use it to manipulate things on the molecular and subatomic scales, allowing him to disassemble or reassemble complex devices, explosively even, and he's even been able to do this gaining control over electrons in an atom. He can create force fields, concussive blasts, electromagnetic blasts, and fly at speeds of around Mach 2. But he further uses his telekinesis to enhance his strength, speed, and reflexes to an impressive degree, as well as using his abilities to heal himself and others, resurrecting and fixing the atoms that make up our bodies. And that's all alongside his other abilities, including enhanced durability, longevity, healing factor, and a psionic vampirism. Number 2, Cosmar. When Tashi Rapina first showed up in 2020, her mutant powers caused a little bit of a problem. Tashi has Waneric reality warping, essentially meaning her dreams branch out and affect the reality around her, trapping her and whoever is around in the dreams. Now, people trapped in there can be physically or telepathically affected by these abilities, so for example, when she was having a nightmare, some guards discovered her and were turned into monsters by her abilities, but it only added to the fuel of her nightmare, making things a lot more worse. universe. Her abilities can also show others their dreams or fears. It took Wildside using their abilities to make Tashi's nightmares into a pleasant dream to free those who had been trapped inside. It's a bonkers power, and its emergence affected her physically too, which led her on a mission to try and find a way to look more human again. But her ability is definitely one of the more unique ones I've seen, with those who become trapped in her dreams being connected in one neural network with Tashi and used as a power source. Number 1. Danny Moonstar. Okay, a bunch of you guys mentioned Danny Moonstar in the comments of the last part, as there was a mutant that had a similar shtick. But Danny's powers are much more advanced than those of Beltane. While Beltane can create illusions of people's fears, Danny's powers only started here. But now she can create three-dimensional images of certain visual concepts from thoughts and emotional impressions within the minds of either herself or others. It used to be just fears, but then it moved on to deepest desires, and then as she grew, so too did her power to allow her to create images from thoughts and less intense emotions. So, as an example, as this actually happened, say Danny and Cannonball walk into a high-class hotel dressed casually. So to blend in, Danny used the image of what a well-dressed hotel guest would look like from the mind of the desk clerk and disguise both herself and her teammate in those images. She could do this with multiple people at once as well, creating illusions that were almost real to the person whom they belonged. But with a little help from Professor X, she was able to create an image that was physically tangible. That's her potential, but so far it's only happened the one time. Normally her power is used more as a psychological tool or trick, but it's not her only thing. Having powers that are psionic in nature, she can actually focus her powers into energy arrows, which can stun someone by disrupting their central nervous system or force them to relive a traumatic memory. And as she grew, these arrows became more capable of physical harm.